Shanti, moving on to our topic, I-485. As all we know that I-485 is the final stage of GC process. So exactly what documents are needed for this?
Right. So yes, as you said, 485 is the final stage for the GC process. And if you're outside the country, you file an immigrant petition. If you're in the country, you file what's called a 485. In order to file a 485, you would of course need an approved. The when you can file a 485, just to start with the when, is once the I-140 is approved and once your priority date is available. What is a priority date? Priority date is basically you have to go to travel.gov. In travel.gov website, you have to go to the visa bulletin. You have to check what is your category, which category you're in. We are today basically talking about employment-based green cards, so we're talking about employment categories. So there's several employment, EB1, EB2, EB3, employment-based categories. So you have to check which one you're in, and that will be given on your I-140 approval. And then you have to see what dates they're working on. If they're working on your priority date, then you can file the 485. In some instances, if the USCIS gives permission to do so, and it will be in the visa bulletin itself, they will allow you to use dates for filing, which is like a accelerated date. It's not an actual date which is available to you, but it's something that they're allowing you to do in advance in anticipation that the date might become current, moving forward. So they give you advance notice and allow you to file a 485 in advance. That happened as recently as October of last year, when thousands of people, Indian nationals especially, were able to file because there was not that much demand worldwide, because no one was coming into the country. There were no immigrant visas being petitioned. So that's when you can file. The priority date has to be available. Now, once you file, if the priority date is available, you have to file a 485 form. The 485 form is quite complex, and I would suggest not to do it on your own. There are many different aspects in the 485 form. One of it is, of course, just your just your information, basically your date of birth, name, address, last 5 years of where you resided, last 5 years of where you were employed. Now, this could be tricky if you're not trying to be accurate. Sometimes you just, guess, okay, maybe I started with this company in this month. Why do we have to be accurate about when I started? Yes, you have to be accurate, because when you're filing the I-140, if that also requires that you show experience letters. So if those experience letters and the dates there are not matching with their dates in the 485, there will be a problem.
Okay.
So you have to make sure that it matches and there should be no discrepancy. The second thing I would say with reference to addresses, we might think that what difference does it make what address you write or what dates you put. If you're saying in your employment that you're working in Ohio, and you show an address of DC during that same period of time, then again there'll be a question as to, why is this not matching? So the entire form, there shouldn't be any discrepancy. It should be like a story, a well-told story where everything is matching. The other thing that is usually in a 485, the other crucial information that has to be filled out is the answers to the questions with reference to the bunch of questions asking if you did any bad things, if you were ever arrested, if you ever were out of status, if you ever stayed, if you ever worked illegally. So you have to read those questions really carefully, because if you answer wrong and then they find out something else, then they can really grill you at the interview. And if they think that you are trying to hide something from them or lie to them, then they can deny the entire green card petition. So you have to know what the question is, you have to understand the question and take legal help if you don't understand what the question means, and not just answer no or answer yes blindly. For example, one of the questions is, have you ever been arrested? Now, people don't understand what this means half the time, because sometimes even in a traffic violation, you can be taken to the police station, but maybe no charges are filed against you, but you can just, some tickets are written and then you're released. So half the time they don't even know that they've been arrested, but actually they have been arrested. And it'll come up in their record. So if they say, no, we've never been arrested, and at the interview, the officer will then pull up the record and print it out and give it to you and show it to you. Look, you've been, why did you say that you haven't been arrested? And they might think again that it's, you answered fraudulently. You were trying to keep it from the USCIS, and they just based on that they could deny the case. So you have to be careful as to making sure that you answer every question accurately. Another example I can give you is, for example, if you have an EAD and it expires, and then you file for an extension of the EAD. Some people think that they can work on the EAD as long as the extension is filed, even though it's not approved.
Okay.
Because there's some previous law about it, so there's some confusion. So you might respond no, saying that you've never worked illegally. But then when you look at all the documents and you look at the dates of employment, it might show that you're actually working during, because everything is in the form.
Yes.
So it might show that you're working when you did not have any work authorization. And if you try to explain them that you didn't know what the law was, it's not going to work. So you need to find out what the law is. And if you found out that you ever violated the law, then you should put it out. Say, yes, I did work, but I fall under this exception. I work for less than 6 months without authority. So therefore, there is this section called 245K, which can help. And I'm using that 245K.
Okay,
So there are
Prashanti.
many things. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple of callers. Let's talk to them.
Sure.
And from Atlanta, Samad Garu, please go on.
Yeah. So my question is the topic on which you are explaining. So I-485 dates came current for me in October, and then it has retrogressed at least 3 years back from my current date. So in the meantime, if I get another employment in a different category, can I just join it and do not file the 485 supplement J with them and continue to use the EAD which I received now, or should I start a new perm process with the new employer when the time comes?
So first thing is, I'm happy that you received your EAD and that you filed in October and you've already received EAD, because that's not many people have. People are still looking for their receipts. They haven't, received the receipts also as yet. But if you filed, then the one advantage of that they're giving you, allowing you to file early based on dates for filing, is that they're allowing you also to change jobs. So that's part of the law, the AC-21, job portability. So if you file a 485 and if your I-140 is approved and 180 days has passed since the filing of the 485, then you're allowed to switch jobs, but you do need to notify USCIS by submitting a new 485J that the job has changed and this is the new job. And if they find that the job is similar to the previous job that you're working in, that the form has been filed, then you can seamlessly switch to the new employer. If they deny your 485J, then you'll have to refile the form. So that it depends on what your situation is. But no, you have to inform the new company, you have to inform USCIS about change in employment, because if you don't, and then they send an RFE and ask for a job offer letter, then at that point you will be asked as to why you didn't inform. So it's better prudent for you to inform every time you change your job.